Nyra Valzak's six-fingered hand hovered over the sensor console, her violet eyes narrowing as the anomalous reading pulsed again. This wasn't some cosmic background radiation or the random whisper of a dying star. No, this was structured, intentional. "Well, that's just perfect," she muttered, adjusting her cranial ridges in frustration. "Finally get approval for a standard biological survey, and instead, I find whatever this is." The research vessel Luminous Horizon drifted at the very edge of charted space, its sleek hull reflecting the distant starlight. Nyra had specifically requested this mission to study extremophile organisms in the radiation belts of the Nexus cluster. Instead, her equipment had picked up something far more interesting and potentially troublesome. "Captain Tannic, I need you on the observation deck," she said into her comm unit. Found something that definitely wasn't in the mission briefing. Captain Elevar Tannic's voice crackled back, dripping with his trademark skepticism. "If you've discovered another space barnacle that changes color when you sing to it, I swear by the 7 moons." "Not this time," Nyra replied, unable to suppress a smirk. "This is a signal. Artificial. Coming from the Voidwalker system." The comm went silent for several seconds. Even the usually unflappable Tannic knew what that meant. Voidwalker was a dead system, its planet scoured of life during the Great Cataclysm centuries ago. Nothing should be transmitting from there. Nothing should be alive to transmit. The observation deck doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss as Captain Tannic strode in, his gray skin ashen even for a Juldari. Navigator Fira Leth bounced in behind him, her characteristic enthusiasm making her practically vibrate with excitement. "A signal? From a dead system?" Fira's translucent antennae twitched. "This is incredible. We have to investigate. Think of the paper we could publish. Think of the regulations we'd be breaking," growled Security Chief Razik Vuel, who had appeared silently at the doorway, his imposing frame nearly filling it. "Voidwalker is classified as a prohibited zone by Imperial Decree 7729B. Entry without clearance is punishable by..." Yes, exile to the outer colonies. "We know the rules, Vuel." Nyra waved dismissively, bringing up the star chart. "But rules don't usually apply to things that shouldn't exist." The holographic display showed the Voidwalker system in all its desolate glory. A dying red sun surrounded by 5 barren planets. No outposts, no mining operations, no authorized presence of any kind. And yet, there it was again. A pulse, regular, deliberate, coming from the 3rd planet. "This system has been marked uninhabitable for over 300 cycles," Captain Tannic said, stroking his chin tendrils thoughtfully. "Official records state the star's radiation made it impossible for complex life to develop. Official records also state that the moon of Krell is made of crystallized sugar, but we all know that's propaganda to keep the mining conglomerates happy," Nyra countered. "Something or someone is sending a message from that dead system, and I want to know what or who it is." Fira was already calculating a course, her fingers dancing over the navigation controls. "We could be there in under 6 hours if we push the engines." Vuel's face contorted into what passed for concern among his species. "This has trap written all over it. Pirates, smugglers, exiled political dissidents. The Void knows what's waiting there." Nyra looked at each of her colleagues in turn, then back at the pulsing signal. "Or it could be the greatest discovery of our careers." "Your call, Captain." Tannic sighed, the sound like sand shifting in an ancient bottle. "Plot the course, Navigator Leth. But Vuel, prepare security protocols. If this is a trap, I want us ready." As the Luminous Horizon altered course toward the Forbidden System, Nyra couldn't help but wonder what awaited them in the void. Scientific discovery? Danger? Or something else entirely? The signal pulsed again, like a heartbeat from the past, calling them forward. The luminous horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that sent ripples through Nyra's cup of steaming kava. 6 hours of tense silence had left the crew on edge, and now they faced the forbidden Voidwalker system in all its decrepit glory. Sensors online and scanning, Nyra announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. Picking up the signal at triple the strength now. Definitely coming from the third planet. Captain Tannic stood behind her, his posture rigid. I want it noted in the official log that I expressed significant reservations about this detour. Duly noted, Captain, Nyra replied without looking up. Also note that you ultimately gave the order to proceed, so your career is just as finished as mine if Imperial Command finds out. Tannic made a sound somewhere between a growl and a laugh. Your ability to find the silver lining continues to astound me, Dr. Valzak. The main view screen displayed a panoramic view of the system. The red giant sun burned low and angry, casting an eerie crimson light across the barren planets orbiting it. According to every official record, the great cataclysm had scorched these worlds clean centuries ago. Nothing should remain. Nothing should live. Captain, I'm getting some very strange readings from the third planet, Navigator Fira called out, her voice pitched higher than usual. Surface temperatures within habitable ranges in certain regions. Atmosphere thin but present. And wait, that can't be right. What is it? Nyra moved to Fira's station, peering over her shoulder. Artificial structures, big ones, spread across the northern continent. The bridge fell silent. That's impossible, Tannic whispered. The official history states this system has been dead for 300 cycles. Well, someone forgot to tell whoever built those, Nyra said, pointing to the screen as Fira brought up a magnified view. Massive geometric shapes dotted the planet's surface: domes, towers, and what appeared to be landing pads. Security Chief Vool immediately began barking orders into his comm unit. Security team to ready stations. Armed defense systems. Scan for weapons signatures. Calm down, Vool, Nyra said. If anyone was alive down there, they'd have hailed us by now. Or they're waiting for us to get closer before they attack, Vool countered, his ridge crests flaring with stress. Pirates use this tactic all the time. Lure in curious researchers, then strike when they're in range. Fira's antennae suddenly went rigid, a sign of intense concentration among her species. I'm detecting energy readings from the surface, but they don't match anything in our database. Unknown technology? Captain Tannic asked, leaning forward. Not just unknown, Fira replied, her voice hushed with awe. The energy signature is elegant, efficient beyond anything the Empire has developed. Whoever built these structures was operating on technical principles we haven't even theorized yet. Nyra felt a shiver run down her spine. The Juldari Empire prided itself on being the technological pinnacle of known space. Their scientists and engineers were the envy of a dozen allied species. To find technology that surpassed their understanding wasn't just surprising, it was paradigm shifting. The signal is coming from this structure here, Nyra said, circling a massive dome near what appeared to be a dried-up ocean. It's broadcasting on a loop. Same pattern every 78 seconds. A distress beacon? Captain Tannic suggested. Or a warning to stay away, Vool muttered darkly. Nyra studied the readings more closely. The architecture doesn't match any known species in our records. Not Juldari, not Vexhani, not even the ancient Zil collective. What about the forbidden records? Fira asked quietly, glancing nervously at the captain. No one spoke for a moment. The forbidden records were exactly that, information sealed by Imperial decree, accessible only to the highest levels of government. Most citizens weren't even supposed to know they existed. You mean the human records, Nyra finally said, breaking the taboo by speaking the word aloud. Captain Tannic's eyes widened. Dr. Valzak, that's enough. Speculation about mythological species is not appropriate for an official mission. Mythological? Nyra challenged. We all know the stories, Captain. The Great Cataclysm wasn't some natural disaster. It was a war. With them. The signal pulsed again on the screen, rhythmic and unceasing, like a heartbeat from a ghost civilization. Take us into orbit, Captain Tannick ordered after a long pause. But maintain defensive posture. If this is connected to that species, we need to know. As the luminous horizon began its approach to the third planet, Nyra couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched by eyes long thought closed forever. The landing vessel touched down with a soft thud on the cracked surface of what had once been a massive plaza. Dust swirled around the ship, dancing in the crimson light of the dying sun. Nyra adjusted her environmental suit, checking the atmospheric readings one final time before nodding to the team. Breathable, but thin. Keep your supplemental oxygen handy in case you start feeling lightheaded, she instructed. And Vool, try not to shoot anything unless it shoots first. The security chief glared at her through his helmet visor. Your confidence in my restraint is heartwarming, Doctor. Captain Tannick remained on the luminous horizon, monitoring their expedition from orbit. Only 4 of them had made the journey to the surface: Nyra, Vool, Fira, and technician Jorax, who hadn't said a word since they'd entered the system. Not that Jorax ever said much. The technician subspecies of Juldari were notorious for their taciturn nature. The airlock cycled open, and they stepped onto the surface of a world that should have been dead. By the Emperor's 7th tentacle, Fira whispered, her antennae twitching wildly inside her helmet. It's a city. A real city. Stretching before them were the ruins of what must have once been a magnificent metropolis. Massive structures of an unknown metallic alloy rose hundreds of meters into the sky, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that seemed to capture and redirect the dim sunlight. Streets radiated outward in perfect geometric precision. Smaller buildings, presumably dwellings or commercial structures, lined these thoroughfares. All empty, all silent. Spread out, but stay within comm range, Vool ordered, his weapon at the ready. Jorax, see if you can locate the source of the signal. The technician nodded, consulting his handheld scanner. After a moment, he pointed toward a massive domed structure at what appeared to be the city center. They moved cautiously through the abandoned streets. Nyra couldn't help but notice the lack of debris one would expect from a catastrophic event or invasion. This place hadn't been destroyed, it had been abandoned. Methodically. Purposefully. Look at this, she called to the others, kneeling beside what appeared to be a public terminal of some kind. The technology was unlike anything she had ever seen, but certain elements were unmistakably designed for humanoid interaction. This was made for beings with 5 fingers, not 6 like us. And the spacing suggests they were smaller digits. Fira had wandered to what appeared to be a memorial wall, covered in symbols. I think this is writing. Not Juldari script, not any trade language I recognize. Nyra joined her, running her scanner over the inscriptions. The patterns are consistent with the forbidden lexicon. You mean, Fira began. Human language, Nyra confirmed. This was a human colony. Vool made a warding gesture, a superstitious habit that seemed at odds with his pragmatic nature. Humans are myths, cautionary tales told to younglings. The great destroyers who challenged the Empire and were wiped out for their hubris. Then who built this city? Nyra challenged. Look around you, Vool. Everything here contradicts what we've been taught. The Great Cataclysm was supposed to have destroyed this system utterly, yet here stands a city. Abandoned, yes, but not destroyed. Jorax, who had continued toward the domed building, suddenly called out the first sound they'd heard from him all day. He found it. They hurried to join him. Inside the dome, a single pedestal stood in the center of a vast circular chamber. Atop it sat a small device, pulsing with blue light. The source of the signal. It's a beacon, Nyra said, scanning it. And according to these readings, it's been broadcasting for over 200 years. 200 years? Fira's voice was incredulous. That's not possible. The power source should have failed decades ago. Not if it's using technology beyond our understanding, Nyra replied, carefully studying the device without touching it. The question is, what message has it been sending all this time? And to whom? As if in response to her question, the floor around them suddenly illuminated. Lines of light traced complex patterns across the chamber, converging at the pedestal. The beacon's pulsing quickened. "We should leave," Vul said, raising his weapon. "Now." But before they could move, a figure materialized in the center of the room, a holographic projection of a being that was almost Juldari-like, but wrong in subtle ways. 5 fingers, no ridge crests, smooth skin, eyes facing forward. Human. "Greetings," the figure said in perfect Juldari, its voice resonant and calm. "I am Atlas, Advanced Temporal Logistical Archival System. This installation has been dormant for 247 standard years, awaiting authorized contact. You are the first visitors since the evacuation." Nyra stepped forward despite Vul's warning gesture. "You're an artificial intelligence." "A simplified but accurate description," Atlas replied. "I was created to maintain this outpost and provide information to qualified parties should contact be re-established." "Qualified parties?" Fira asked. "Originally, only human authorities. However, my protocols permit information sharing with non-hostile entities after 2 centuries of isolation. You do not match Juldari aggressor profiles from my database." "Aggressor profiles?" Vul bristled. Nyra shot him a warning look before addressing Atlas again. "The Empire teaches that humans were destroyed in the Great Cataclysm. Is that true?" The hologram seemed to consider this, its expression unreadable. "That information is historically inaccurate. Humanity was not destroyed. They made a strategic decision to withdraw from this region of space following the conflict with the Juldari Empire." The 4 explorers exchanged shocked glances. "You mean they're still out there?" Fira asked, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her caution. "Yes," Atlas confirmed. "Human civilization continues to exist beyond the boundaries of what you term known space. This beacon was left to monitor for signs of Juldari evolution." "Evolution?" Nyra frowned. "Social and ethical evolution," Atlas clarified. "Humanity wished to know if the Juldari Empire would learn from the past or continue on its previous course. Your presence here, and your questions, are the first positive indicators in centuries." "What exactly do you mean by previous course?" Nyra asked, her scientific curiosity overriding the growing unease in her gut. Everything about this discovery challenged the foundation of Juldari historical understanding. Atlas's holographic form gestured with an elegant sweep of its hand. The chamber darkened, and suddenly they were surrounded by projected images, stars, planets, fleets of vessels with unfamiliar configurations. "Historical record access granted," Atlas announced. "Beginning chronological playback of human Juldari conflict, year 2387 to 2418 by human calendar." The images shifted to show a peaceful-looking outpost not unlike the one they now stood in. Human figures moved about their daily tasks. Then, without warning, vessels bearing unmistakable Juldari Imperial markings appeared. What followed was not a negotiation or even a formal declaration. It was a slaughter. "No," Vul whispered, his weapon lowering involuntarily. "This cannot be accurate." Accessing Imperial military archives would confirm these events, Atlas replied dispassionately. "Though those records have likely been purged or classified beyond normal access." The projection continued, showing similar unprovoked attacks on numerous human settlements across multiple systems. In each case, the humans appeared to be caught unaware, their defenses minimal. Our historical texts claim humans were aggressive expansionists who threatened to destabilize the entire sector, Fira said, her antennae drooping in distress. We're taught that the Empire acted in preemptive defense. A convenient narrative, Atlas replied. The truth, as recorded by multiple neutral observer species, is that humanity was engaged in peaceful exploration and colonization of uninhabited systems when the Juldari Empire, fearing competition for resources, launched what they termed Operation Preventative Strike. The images shifted again, this time showing human vessels regrouping, organizing, their technology visibly evolving with each engagement. Humans possess remarkable adaptive capabilities, Atlas continued. Within 14 months of the initial attacks, human defensive and offensive capabilities had advanced to match Juldari technology. Within 26 months, they had surpassed it. The hologram displayed a massive space battle. Human ships, outnumbered 3-1, systematically dismantled a Juldari attack fleet with precision strikes that seemed to anticipate every counter move. We should be dead, Technician Jorak spoke suddenly, his eyes fixed on the tactical displays. These maneuvers, this technological evolution rate if they continued on this trajectory. Total Juldari defeat would have been inevitable within 5 years, Atlas confirmed. Human military analysts projected an 89.7% probability of complete Imperial collapse if the conflict continued. Nyra felt her breath catch. Then why retreat? Why abandon this territory if victory was assured? The projection shifted again, showing not military engagements but civilian populations, Juldari civilians on their homeworlds, going about their lives, unaware of the war being fought at the edges of their empire. Because the cost of victory was deemed unacceptable, Atlas explained. Human ethical protocols prohibited retaliatory strikes against civilian populations. Continuing the conflict would have required either violating this principle or accepting a prolonged war of attrition with significant casualties on both sides. So they just left? Vul asked incredulously. Abandoned territory they had rightfully claimed because they were too weak to do what was necessary? Atlas turned toward him, the holographic eyes somehow conveying disappointment. Chief Vul, humanity possessed weapons that could have reduced the Juldari homeworld to molten slag within hours of the decision being made. They chose restraint when your ancestors chose aggression. Would you characterize that as weakness? Vul fell silent. I don't understand, Fira interjected. If humans had such military superiority, why has the Empire never acknowledged this? Why rewrite history so completely? Pride, Nyra answered before Atlas could. The Empire couldn't admit it had started a war. It couldn't win against a species it had underestimated. So they claimed victory instead, painted humans as the aggressors, and classified everything that contradicted the official narrative. That assessment is consistent with observed Juldari psychological patterns, Atlas agreed. Vul had wandered to another console, his security training driving him to verify this impossible information independently. After several moments of interaction with the alien technology, he looked up, his face ashen. It's true, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I accessed a hidden compartment in the security subsystems. It contains original Juldari military communications, unaltered. He swallowed hard. Including congratulatory messages for successful surprise attacks on unarmed human research outposts. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Centuries of historical certainty crumbled around them, leaving nothing but uncomfortable questions in its wake. So the great cataclysm Nyra began. Was humanity's organized withdrawal, Atlas finished. They destroyed their own infrastructure that couldn't be transported, relocated their colonial populations, and enacted a communications blackout with this region of space. The official designation was Operation Longview. But why leave this outpost? Why leave you? Fira asked. To watch, to wait, to determine if contact should ever be reestablished. Atlas's hologram looked at each of them in turn. Humanity hoped that in time, the Juldari might evolve beyond Imperial aggression. That someday peaceful coexistence might be possible. Technician Jorax had been silent for most of the exchange, but now he spoke, his voice thoughtful. If that's true, then our presence here, our curiosity rather than hostility, might be the first step toward what they hoped for. The four explorers looked at one another, the weight of their discovery settling upon them. This wasn't just a historical curiosity or an archaeological find. This was potentially civilization-altering information. We need to decide what to do with this, Nyra said finally. The Empire would never acknowledge this truth. They might even destroy this place to maintain the official narrative. Not to mention what they'd do to us for discovering it, Fira added grimly. We could report that we found nothing, Vul suggested, surprising the others. Say the signal was just random electromagnetic interference. No one would question it. And leave this knowledge buried, Nyra challenged. Leave our entire society living a lie. The truth could destabilize the Empire, Vul countered. Cause civil unrest, maybe even civil war. Billions could die if this comes out the wrong way. Or, Fira said quietly, it could be the catalyst for the change humans were waiting for. A chance to reconnect with a species that chose peace, even when war would have been easier. They all fell silent again, each contemplating the impossible choice before them, loyalty to Empire or loyalty to truth. There is another option, Atlas offered into the silence. One that humanity anticipated might someday be necessary. Before Atlas could elaborate, Captain Tanik's panicked voice burst through their comm units. Ground team, return to the shuttle immediately. Imperial cruiser Unyielding Justice just dropped out of FTL in orbit. They're demanding to know what we're doing in a restricted sector. Nyra exchanged alarmed glances with her teammates. How did they find us so quickly? They must have been tracking us since we diverted from our registered course, Vul growled, already moving toward the exit. Standard security protocol for research vessels venturing near restricted zones. We can't leave yet, Nyra protested. Turning to Atlas, you mentioned another option. What is it? The hologram flickered as if processing the new urgency of their situation. Humanity left contingency protocols for this scenario. I can provide coordinates to current human territory and a verification code that will identify you as peaceful contacts. Dr. Valzak. Captain Tanik's voice crackled through again. Commander Drazak is threatening to open fire if you don't return to the luminous horizon in the next 15 minutes. He's demanding we surrender all research findings immediately. Drazak? Vul's face hardened. Military Intelligence Division. The most zealous enforcers of Imperial doctrine. They'll erase everything here and us with it. Their comm unit squealed as another transmission cut in. A stern, coldly professional voice filled their helmets. Unauthorized research vessel and ground team, this is Commander Kelvik Drazak of the Imperial Security Forces. You are in violation of Imperial Decree 7729B. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with lethal force. Any attempt to conceal discoveries will be treated as high treason. Charming fellow, Fira muttered. Nyra made a split-second decision. Atlas, can you access the city's remaining systems? Create some kind of distraction? Limited functionality remains, the AI responded. I can activate the automated defense grid for approximately 3 minutes before backup power depletes. Do it, Nyra ordered, and give us those coordinates. We're not handing this discovery over to Imperial propagandists. Vul stared at her incredulously. You're suggesting we run from an Imperial cruiser? That's suicide. Staying here is suicide, Nyra countered. You saw the records. You know what they did. What do you think they'll do to us now that we know the truth? After a moment's hesitation, Vul nodded grimly. Technician Jorax, help me secure our exit route. Fira, Prepare the shuttle for immediate launch." As they moved into action, Nyra turned back to Atlas. "Can you transfer a copy of yourself to our systems? Your knowledge shouldn't be lost." "My programming is too extensive for your vessel's data storage," Atlas replied. "However, I can provide essential historical records and the coordinates." The hologram gestured, and a nearby console ejected a small crystalline data module. "This contains everything you need." Nyra grabbed the module just as alarms began blaring throughout the complex. The chamber's lights flickered as dormant systems suddenly surged to life. "Defense grid activation commencing," Atlas announced, its voice taking on a more formal tone. "Automated countermeasures deploying." "Good luck, Dr. Valzak. Humanity will be interested to learn that the Juldari are finally asking the right questions." The team sprinted through the awakening city. Behind them, ancient defense turrets emerged from hidden compartments, firing brilliant pulses of energy skyward. The ground shook as long dormant shield generators struggled to power up after centuries of disuse. "What in the seven hells is happening down there?" Captain Tannic demanded over the comm. "Change of plans, Captain," Nyra replied, breathing hard as they ran. "Prepare the luminous horizon for immediate departure. We're not surrendering to Dryzak." "Have you lost your mind? The unyielding justice outguns us 10-1. "They can't shoot what they can't see," Nyra said cryptically. They reached the shuttle just as a series of explosions lit up the sky above them. The ancient defense system was targeting the Imperial cruiser, forcing it into evasive maneuvers. The distraction wouldn't last long, but it might give them just enough time. Fira took the pilot's seat, her hands flying over the controls. "Where exactly are we going?" Nyra inserted the data crystal into the shuttle's navigation system. Instantly, a star chart appeared, showing regions far beyond Imperial space. A course plotted itself automatically. "Somewhere they'll never think to look for us," she answered. The shuttle's engines roared to life just as a squadron of Imperial fighters broke through the atmospheric defenses. Plasma bolts streaked past them as Fira executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have made a combat pilot proud. "Captain Tannic, sync your navigation with our shuttle and prepare for blind jump on my mark," Nyra called into the comm. "This is treason," Tannic replied, but Nyra could hear the resignation in his voice. He'd seen enough to know there was no going back. "No, Captain," she said as the shuttle broke atmosphere, the luminous horizon coming into view ahead of them. "This is first contact." Behind them, the ancient human city glowed with power one last time, its defenses buying them precious seconds. As the shuttle docked with the research vessel, Nyra caught a final transmission from Atlas. "Contingency protocols complete. Data purge initiating. Good journey, explorers." The luminous horizon's engines flared brilliant blue as it executed the blind jump, vanishing from Juldari space just as the unyielding justice brought its main weapons to bear. The luminous horizon drifted in the empty space between stars, its systems running on minimal power to avoid detection. Inside the observation deck, the crew had gathered in tense silence, each processing the enormity of their situation. "Well," Captain Tannic said finally, "I suppose this makes us traitors to the Empire." "Traitors to a lie," Nyra countered, placing the data crystal on the table between them. Its facets caught the dim light, sparkling with promised revelations. Everything we believed about our history, about the great cataclysm, it was fabricated to hide the Empire's shame. "That doesn't change our predicament," Vul pointed out pragmatically. "We fled from an Imperial cruiser, stolen classified information, and are now in possession of coordinates to a species officially declared extinct." He paused. "Even if we disposed of this crystal and returned with some plausible explanation, the punishment would be severe." "Assuming they believe us at all," Fira added. "More likely, we'd simply disappear." Technician Jorex, who had been silently examining the navigation data, finally spoke. The coordinates would take us beyond the Veiled Nebula. No Imperial vessel has ever returned from that region. Because no Imperial vessel was ever invited, Nyra said softly. But we have been. The five of them looked at one another, the unspoken question hanging in the recycled air. There was no going back, but did they dare go forward? Captain Tannick straightened his uniform, a curious formality given their circumstances. But I need to make a decision for this vessel and crew. I'm open to hearing your thoughts. We could find refuge in the non-aligned systems, Vool suggested. Change our identities, live out our lives in exile. And abandon this knowledge? Nyra gestured to the crystal. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about truth and maybe redemption. I want to meet them, Fira said simply. The humans, a species that chose peace when they could have chosen annihilation. Don't you all want to know what they've become in the centuries since? Silence fell again as they each considered the paths before them. My whole life, Nyra said, breaking the quiet, I've studied other species, always searching for what makes them unique, what makes them thrive or fail. But I never questioned our own myths about ourselves. She looked around at her colleagues now, her friends now, bound by shared discovery and danger. What if the greatest xenobiological find of my career isn't some exotic life form on a distant world, but the truth about our own past? Captain Tannick nodded slowly, reaching a decision. Navigator Leth, plot a course using the provided coordinates. Security Chief Vuel, establish rotating watch schedules. We don't know what we might encounter on this journey. He turned to Nyra. Dr. Valzak, I'm tasking you with studying that crystal. Learn everything you can about what awaits us. As the crew moved to their stations with renewed purpose, Nyra remained at the viewport, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity had been building, evolving, waiting. While the Juldari Empire had stagnated under the weight of its own lies, what had humans become? The luminous horizon's engines hummed to life, propelling them toward the unknown. As the stars blurred around them, Nyra couldn't shake the feeling that this journey had been anticipated long ago, that perhaps humanity had always known that someday, curiosity would overcome fear, and truth would find a way to be heard. Somewhere in the vastness ahead, ancient eyes were opening, and they had been watching all along.